Hey YouTube, hey everybody, this is Tina with another autism video for you. I've decided to stop counting them because I don't remember which one I'm on, but it's been a while since I made one. And still feeling self-conscious about the camera, but I will do what I have to do to get through that. I was just watching a presentation on YouTube by Dr. Tony Atwood about his specialty is autism in females. And before I go any further, let me just say that I am not a doctor. I have no expertise in this at all. This is just my opinion, just my personal opinion. Do what you like with it. I am a self-diagnosed autistic adult. I'm finding more and more that most autistics are unfortunately self-diagnosed, and that the criteria of Asperger's syndrome has actually been removed from the process of being diagnosed. I don't know why they don't use Asperger's syndrome anymore. I was told that it's because it's supposed to make it easier for people who are autistic to get different services. But I find that when people are put onto a spectrum, because quote unquote, nobody really knows what they have, they're just putting them on a spectrum, it makes it harder for them to then get help with whatever's wrong. It doesn't make it easier. So I'm not really sure what somebody was trying to accomplish by saying that Asperger's apparently isn't a valid diagnosis anymore. I have no idea why that happened. But anyway, here we are. So I'm listening to this presentation. It was about a half an hour or so, and it was really informative, and I really appreciated all the information that he had to give. I find it a bit unusual that a wonderful gentleman has devoted his life to studying autism in females, but I'm glad that he's out there because of his amazing information that he can give about the way that autism affects women. He kind of went back and forth between guys and girls. It wasn't just girls, but it was specifically geared toward women and how it affects us. I did get a little bit sad when I was watching it because by the time he was done talking, I felt like what he was trying to say was that women with autism don't have their own identities at all, because all they do is fake it through everything and mimic everything and mimic everybody and mimic everybody's personalities. And it was almost like he was trying to say that it's because we don't have our own. And I don't think that was the message he was trying to give, but unfortunately, that's the way it came out. And it really got to me because I thought, you know, for those of us that have autism, for those of us that are on the spectrum, that's exactly what we're fighting every single day. We are trying so desperately to show the world that we have our own personalities. We have our own personalities, we have our own instincts, and we do use them. We have our own accents, we have our own ways of coping with things, and all of this stuff is very distinctive and very, should I say, specific, even though sometimes we might have trouble finding it. It is in there, and we have enough trouble on our own finding it ourselves without people on the outside, if you'll forgive me, trying to understand, try as they might, God bless them, and then saying how all we do is mimic everybody else, you know. And I thought, okay, well, how do you hear something like that as an autistic individual and become, I guess, empowered by it rather than, you know, feeling, you know, defeated by it or feeling like you're sort of left without a response? What in the world do I say to that? We do have our own identities. We have trouble finding them a lot of the times, but they are in there. And it's even harder a lot of times to prove, if you will, to others that they are there. But I will say this, often from a young age, we do learn to mimic because it helps us cope with life. We mimic personalities, and we mimic accents, and we mimic all kinds of different things, and that helps us to cope with what's going on around us. And I basically just gave a list of coping skills that we apparently don't have. You know, I mean, the stereotype is that we have no coping skills, right? Okay, it's not true. It's not true. The thing is, most of the people around us, they don't cope with life in that particular way. So the stereotype is that we don't cope with life at all. And it's just, it's not true. Just because you're more vulnerable and you feel things more deeply, that doesn't mean that you don't cope with life. You know, just because it's harder for other people around you to take you seriously as an adult, that doesn't mean that you don't cope with life. It might mean that the other person can't cope with who you are, but it doesn't mean you're not coping with life. That's not true. And again, this is the stereotype that we are trying so desperately to not erase, but it's like we have to prove to everybody around us that we are legitimate people with legitimate concerns and legitimate needs and legitimate feelings and attitudes and everything else. And I think that when you learn, especially when you're really young, because most people with autism learn how to mimic things when they are just little tiny kids. That's when it starts, okay? And so when you have the intuition and the wisdom, because we do have intuition, we really do. The overriding message of the presentation I just saw is that other people have intuition and people with autism, particularly women with autism, do not. Not true. Not true. It's just not true. And I would like to submit this. For anyone who learns that early in life to mimic other people and mimic their accents and mimic who they are and what they look like and what they say, and even if you're watching TV and you're watching movies and you get a lot of lines from movies and you get a lot of what you say from movies, which I do, the fact that you know where it fits, that takes wisdom. And I would like to submit that that's a wisdom that a lot of people around us do not have, and so they think that we're being fake. Not necessarily. We just might think that what's said in the movies or what's said on TV is a lot more interesting than what we have to say. Doesn't mean we're being fake. And by the way, it takes wisdom to know the difference. This is my argument for anybody who wants to say that people with autism don't have intuition and they don't have their own identities because all they do is mimic. Well, we know enough to mimic something. That takes intelligence and it takes intuition. So if you don't have that ability, maybe you're the one with the problem. You know, I mean, seriously, maybe that makes me sound conceited and like I'm full of myself, but that is my defense to anyone who wants to say that we don't know ourselves and we don't have any coping skills and we don't have our own identities because all we do is mimic other people's. So, and by the way, if we're making a bunch of mistakes and we're not doing things right, you're the one who just said that we mimic people around us. So who's the one that's screwing up here? Chances are it's not us. We're getting what we're getting from other people around us, yet we're the ones that are flawed. We're the ones that have no coping skills. These are the stereotypes. The stereotypes are that we have no coping skills and we have no intuition and we just can't function, if you will, normally. We're getting all that stuff from people around us. So maybe it's not us. Maybe it's the people around us that have the problem. You know, I mean, it is to laugh. It really is. That's why I'm standing here looking in my mirror, smiling, because we are getting what we're getting from other people around us, okay? By a psychologist's own definition. And then we're the ones that are told, again, we have no coping skills, we have no intuition, we can't, read social cues. Let me tell you something. We can read social cues. We think that most social cues are stupid so that we ignore them. Okay? That's not always the case, but a lot of times that is what's going on. We can read social cues, but we ignore them because we think they're stupid, they're unnecessary, they're ridiculous, and we often think that socializing is something that people do because they're not being genuine. They're trying to put up a front. They're trying to make sure that we see the very best of what they are, which is great for a time, but we're always wondering what's underneath that. And that is what we're trying to get at. And because we're ignoring what's on the surface a lot of times, people think that we're not paying attention. They think that we're not paying attention and we don't know what's going on around us. And the fact that a lot of us have very sort of juvenile appearances for a lot of years after maybe we shouldn't, look so childlike, but what we do, and then we sound like we're childlike on top of it. We have these kind of high-pitched voices like I do. I'm in my early 40s, but a lot of people are like, huh? Are you serious? Yeah, I am. I just don't look like it or sound like it. And so it's not the easiest thing, I suppose, to take me seriously either. But I absolutely refuse to believe that we as autistics have no intuition and no coping skills and no ways of figuring out the world around us. I would like to submit that in a lot of cases, our coping skills are actually sharper than the coping skills of people around us. The reason we're not perceived that way is because it doesn't come out that way. We do have these very sort of childlike auras, and we do have, like I said, a lot of times we tend to have really high-pitched voices, and we tend to like things that are more childlike. It's like, I'll give you an example. I played with Barbies until I was 12 years old, and when I went to school every day when I was in junior high, I had girls asking me if I was a virgin at 12 years old. Okay, now let me tell you something. That is not grown up. That is stupid. That's stupid. If you don't realize at 12 years old that you're just a child and you probably should be still playing with dolls, then there's something wrong with you, not me. But guess what? I'm the one who's perceived as immature. I'm the one who's perceived as, not understanding the world around me. Really? Okay, well, I'm smart enough to understand that a 12-year-old child shouldn't be asking another 12-year-old whether or not they're still a virgin. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. That's an insult to me, because it's totally inappropriate. Now, if I've got the wisdom to understand that, who's the one who can't cope here? It's not me, and it's just, I know that with everything I've got, and yet for the autistic person, they're told everywhere they look, you have no coping skills. You have no coping skills, and you don't understand the world around you. All I have to say is, if you think that's so true, just try me. I may not want to meet you where you are, but it's probably because I'm in my own place. Doesn't mean that I can't cope with anything. It just means I'm different from you. And so I suppose this is officially a rant. And it's kind of difficult for me because, like I said, I'm pretty camera shy. Really, this makes me really self-conscious. It's hard for me to see myself. I often think, my God, what are other people thinking of me? That's not an easy thing to do, but here I am and I'm doing it. And I think that when we step out and we express ourselves, whether we're mimicking somebody else or not, you know, it takes wisdom to understand that you need to get wisdom from somewhere else. Does that make any sense? And a lot of times we're perceived as having none, because I think that the fact that we do mimic other people and we mimic other things in life makes it seem like we cannot cope, we cannot handle things. And I know I sound like a broken record, but see, the feeling keeps playing over and over again in my head, so I keep saying it. It's actually very simple. That doesn't make me unable to cope. It's just a pattern that I go through, that's all. So it all depends on what you call coping skills. And sometimes, a lot of times, all we really need is a chance. We don't need any explanations. We don't need any jargon that's difficult to understand. You know, just speak English, please. And I don't mean any disrespect towards Dr. Atwood as a man at all. I'm just saying the overriding message of the video that I just watched was, you know, I mean, poor guy, he's up there trying to explain what autism is and how it affects females, and that's not an easy thing to do anyway. That's not an easy thing for girls to do either. And he's up there and he's trying to explain it, and overall he did a pretty good job. He really did. It's just hard because the underlying message seemed to be that, unfortunately, because of the autism, we don't really have our own identities. And I'm just here to say that's not true. It's not true at all. And if you think it's true, why don't you just give us a chance and see what we have to say? And you know what? If we are mimicking things, who cares? Because to a degree, everybody does that in life at times. Everybody does that. Everybody does that. My question is, why do some people get away with it and some people don't? I think that with people who are autistic, it's more obvious that that's what we're doing. And so it's easier for other people to dismiss us and just think that we don't even mean what we say. And it's just not true, you know? And we figure, hey, as much energy as it takes just for me to get through a day, if you don't believe me and you don't think that I have any of my own coping skills, why am I going to waste more of my energy trying to prove that to you? That's your problem, not mine. Okay? And again, it takes wisdom to recognize that, because, you know, you can waste your whole life trying to please other people. It's not worth it. Not if they don't want to believe you anyway. So why would you waste the energy? And it takes wisdom to know that. And that is a very, very powerful coping skill. It's a very powerful coping skill. Sometimes it takes a lot of acting and a lot of make-believe to cope with real life. And it is that way for everybody. I don't care how much intuition you think you have. I don't care if you think you've got to step up over people with autism because you don't have autism, and so you have intuition that we don't. You know what? I don't care. I don't care. It takes a lot of make-believe and a lot of acting, and dare I say, a lot of lying. Okay? Because we lie all the time. We lie on a daily basis. We lie about how we, and I mean people in general. I'm not even talking about autism anymore. I'm saying we lie. We lie to people about how we feel. We lie to people about how we don't feel. We paste a smile on our face when we do not want to. Sometimes that's just called marriage, because that's what you have to do, right? It's easier to get away with not doing that if you're by yourself, right? I'm just saying. Okay? So, I mean, for a lot of people, that's just normal. And here we are as autistics, and we have more sensitivities, and we are forced, I think, to recognize a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of, frankly, unpleasantness that is so unpleasant that other people around us just cannot handle it. And yet, I'll say it again, we are the ones that are labeled as having no coping skills, no intuition, because we fake it. Yes, we do. We fake it and we know it. And a lot of times other people do not know it because they think their own intuition is so strong that they're just kind of leaning on that and they're thinking it's getting them through everything. Well, what happens when you're not sure? What happens when you don't know? What happens when you have, what happens when you're scared to death? And guess what? It's showing. It's showing, and there's nothing you can do about it. At least we walk into a situation already knowing what that is. We know what anxiety is. We know we can't, we walk into a lot of situations knowing that we cannot handle what's going on. We can't handle it. A lot of times, people without autism, they don't believe that they can't handle things. They don't believe it. And so then when they have to find out that they can't handle things, what do? You know what? I really don't know because that's not my reality. I walk into a situation full of anxiety. I already know I'm worried. I know shit's going to go wrong. I know this is probably not going to work out. And yet I'm the one who has no coping skills? Are you sure? So I'm trying to encourage people out there. The next time somebody tries to tell you that because of your autism you're fake, or you have no coping skills, or you can't hold your phone the right way and people can't see you in your videos, stupid, pay attention, which by the way, I know that, but I don't really care because I'm focusing on what I'm saying, see? We all get scared. We all have to fake it through things. We all are unsure of things. We all have times when that wonderful intuition that apparently some of us don't have fails us. And by the way, if we're the ones who are emulating people around us, and that's where we're getting who we are from, that would be all of you out there. So guess what? That's not a good reflection on other people. In the end, what does that have to do with us? That's what I can't understand. And I'm not saying this, I give you my word, I'm not saying this to be hostile. I'm saying somebody explain that to me. I don't get it. It's true. I will admit it. I'm being honest right now. I don't get it. I don't understand. I think that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just saying, the next time, for those of you with autism out there, the next time somebody tries to tell you that you have no coping skills, remember that it takes wisdom to pretend. That sounds really stupid and it makes us sound like we're idiots. I know, but we're not. We're not, because so many things in life, whether you have autism or you don't, you have to fake it through what you're going through, because you can't be as honest as you'd like to be. You ask any mother with children, how many times do they have to hide their feelings because you have to protect your kids? You can't say to them how you really feel. You can't express that to them because it's too much for them. It would hurt them. It would probably do damage if they knew how you really felt. And so you have to compartmentalize things. You have to hide stuff. And that's for anybody. That's got nothing to do with autism. That's just the nature of being a mom. Everybody has to do that to a degree. And so all this stuff about people with autism having no coping skills, I would rethink that if I were you, because it's just not true. It's just not true on so many levels, because it takes a lot of wisdom to understand that there are things that are deeper that are going on underneath a surface. And a lot of times all other people want to do is focus on the surface. They want, socializing is usually very, very shallow. They want shallow conversation. They want, forgive me, but they want really, really lighthearted stuff. They don't want anything that's too heavy. They don't want to deal with anything that is too deep, right? Okay, and let's take teasing for an example. A lot of people, when they tease you, you know what they're doing? They're trying to get away with saying something to you that is very, very, very unkind. But because you're supposed to know that they're just teasing you, that means that they think that they can get away with it. And then they can blame you because now you don't have a sense of humor because you can't handle what they're saying. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Maybe you just shouldn't have said it in the first place. And I have the wisdom to figure that out and you don't, and yet I'm the one who has no coping skills. Somebody explain that to me because that just doesn't make any sense at all. You know, so many of the things that we say in jest, myself included, I have 3 fingers pointed at me right now, so don't worry, I'm not judging anyone out there. I'm saying very generally, so many of the things that we say in jest, we really shouldn't say them at all. But we think that because we say, oh, I'm just kidding, or I'm just teasing you, or how come you don't know that, or oh my God, what's wrong with you? How come you have such an attitude? You know, basically what that's saying is, I'm offended by you because you won't allow me to treat you like shit. And you're telling me that you don't like what I'm saying to you, and I don't want to be convicted about that. So now you must get away from me. Basically, that's what it is. All right, so I'm going to say it one more time, and then I'm going to stop this rant. Who is it that doesn't have the coping skills? In a lot of cases, it's not the person with autism. It's because other people around us cannot handle the way that we cope with things. And when they can't handle that, then that's when we get ridiculed. We get judged. People worry themselves to death about us. Oh my God, what's going to happen to them? How are they going to make it through life? Well, I'll tell you what, if I didn't have to deal with so many people saying I couldn't make it, that would be a huge help. You know? And so who's the one who doesn't have the coping skills? So if you've got autism and you're thinking, oh my God, I just can't handle this, guess what? You might be able to handle things better than you know. And the reason you don't know is because the people around you are the ones that can't handle you. It's not your fault. It's not your thing. Sometimes, yeah, we say a lot of things that are really socially inappropriate and we need a lot of refining there. That's true. But again, that is something that is universal. That happens to everybody at times. It's not just people with autism. The difference is that when you have autism, it's more acute. It sticks out more. It's more noticeable. Usually it's more obnoxious, especially in guys. And so we tend to get in a lot more trouble for the things that we do that are not socially acceptable. But everybody goes through things like that at different times. It's not just autistics, and it's not that we have no intuition, and it's not that we have no coping skills. It just takes a little bit more understanding. And a lot of times that's all that we're trying to say. And a lot of times when we're not heard, that's what causes, things like meltdowns and, etc. And that's a whole different can of worms. I could do a whole separate video on that. But just be encouraged. The next time somebody wants to tell you that you have no coping skills, go ahead and listen to what they have to say and try and be polite, because that's important. Everybody needs that at times. But it may not be you. It may not be your problem. It may be something about you that they can't handle. And so just keep that in mind and just be brave and just keep speaking your mind. Because there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like what you're doing anyway. That's something else that's universal. It's not just an autistic thing. It's just that when you have autism, I think it sticks out more. So just be encouraged. It's not just you. It's not just you. And it's going to be okay. And I am done with my rant, and I'm done with moving the camera all over the place. I just needed to get that out of my system. So I hope that, looking at my face for a while and hearing me say all this might help somebody to have some encouragement.